Hey everyone, welcome back to my Shimmering Skies review. Next, we're going to be looking at Amethyst. So, the first card we have here is an 8 cost uninkable 7/7 Maleficent. It can shift in for 6, it quests for 2, and it says when you play this character, for each of your characters named Maleficent in play, return a chosen opposing character, item, or location with cost 3 or less to their player's hand. I'm going to put this in C. The effect can be fine. You obviously need to kind of build into the Maleficent strategy, which I don't think is going to be a competitive deck by any means, but in a fun Maleficent thing, the tempo of being able to clear out things that cost 3 or less, you're not getting it out until you have 6 ink, so a lot of that stuff might have already been traded off or something like that. So I don't even think it's super great, but just a fun card. Love the art. Let's see. Next is the Knock, 6 cost inkable 5/5 that quests for 1. And when you play this character, you may move up to 2 damage counters from your chosen character to a chosen opposing character. Um, don't think there's enough traction for it yet. We're going to put it in D, and it needs to kind of be, I think, a bigger body that at least quests for 2. When you're paying 6 for something, you need to really be questing for at least 2. All right, next card is Cogsworth, a Luminary Watchman, 1 cost inkable, 1/1 that quests for 1, and it's when you play this character, chosen character gains Rush this turn. I really like this card. I think that um, it will obviously it gets a lot more value from being in the bounce package color, so being able to play this and bring it back to your hand and just keep giving things rush to deal with threats on the board as they pop up, I think are pretty good. It will definitely depend what's going on in the meta. I think kind of like what Pinocchio was for set 2 and set 3. So I'm going to put it in B more as like a tech card. But one, I love the inkability of it. And I think the ability to give a character rush for 1 ink seems pretty useful, pretty helpful. So B for that. A new Merlin here. We have a 4 cost inkable 3/3 that quests for 2, and it says when you play this character and when he leaves play, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put 1 on the top of your deck and 1 on the bottom. So we pretty much get a scry 2 here when it enters and when it leaves. It's nice that it quests for 2. I'm going to put this in C. It's hard to see where it fits in. Again, if like just being able to scry and get something off your top. I guess with earlier in set 1 we saw things like the Cauldron that saw some play, but since then those effects haven't been, I think, powerful enough to do it. Maybe if we start getting into like a Blurple, it's a good shift target for a later Merlin that comes on, but on its own in a vacuum, I don't think it's really going to be working towards any of the plans and slot into any decks that are going to be competitively viable at the moment. So, but the fact that it quests for 2, it's 4, 3/3 is an okay body. Not too bad. Next card is an Archimedes Exasperated Owl. It's a 3 cost inkable 2/2 evasive that quests for 2. If evasives become a lot, or if again Diablo becomes a big threat, maybe. I mean, it trades with that. I'm gonna put it in stuff. So it's Mini Surfer. Really, I'm gonna put it in C. It's comparable to Mini Surfer, right? A 3 cost evasive that quests for 2. I think the fact that this has 2 health really hurts it, where it gets pinged off by Let the Storm Rage On. It gets pinged off by Teethian Ambitions. I think it's a little bit too fragile. The 2 cost or the 2 strength is nice for trading with Diablo, but you're paying a little bit more. The fact that it quests for 2, where you'd probably want something a little bit cheaper to deal with that. But there is a shift Archimedes that we'll look at a little bit later that maybe would make this viable as a shift target, but we'll look at that when we get there. Next is a 4 cost Bruni Fire Salamander 2/2 that quests for 2. It is also evasive, and it has when this character is banished, you may draw a card. I think this one is definitely better than the Archimedes, even though it's the same stat line, you're paying 1 more. The fact that it replaces itself when it dies, we saw how long Cusco really stuck around in the meta. I think that this is a much better card for that reason. Again, you can value even though it is conditional, the conditional is not super hard to meet. We value card draw at around 2 ink. So, if we take the card draw out of it, it's a 2/2 that quests for 2 and it's evasive for 2 ink. I think that that's a pretty good card. I would probably put it high B, definitely more playable than Cogsworth. We could consider going in A. I think that a lot of these decks would love to run it. I'm just going to keep it in B right now, be a little bit more conservative. I think that it's something that will see some play, just a matter of what quantities and what kind of decks really want to utilize it. Next is Earth Giant, Living Mountains, a 4-cost inkable 4/5 that quests for 2 with a downside that says when you play this character, each opponent draws a card. Good stats, big body. It doesn't. The 4 strength is really nice. I'm going to put it in C. Again, more niche of like maybe you play this in a Jafar deck. Maybe you play this in an Amethyst Steel where you want a whole new world. So, you play this, they draw a card. It doesn't say may, so they're forced to draw the card, and then you whole new world them away. Again, a little bit of strategy to maybe make the downside not a downside, but other than that, giving your opponent a card for just a big body like this, unfortunately, I don't think makes it too much viable or have too much viability. Next, Gale, Wind Spirit, 3-cost inkable 1/2 that quests for 2. When this character is banished in a challenge, return this card to your hand. This is another D. Again, could be really annoying in like starter deck tournaments because it is in the starter deck, or in limited. I'm kind of like Hey was. It's just almost card advantage in a sense where it just doesn't go away unless it gets pinged off. But in competitive, not quite there yet. Not quite. 3-cost inkable White Rabbit, 3/4 that quests for 1. This is a vanilla. It's a D. You're not going to see too much of it. Madam Mim Elephant. We have another Madam Mim adding to the bounce package. A 4-cost inkable 3/7. When you play this character, banish her or return another chosen character of yours to hand. So just like all the Madam Mims. Quest for 1, by the way. And at the start of your turn, you may move up to 2 damage counters from this character to chosen opposing character. I think bounce is really strong. Obviously, we've seen since set 2 how prevalent it's been in any Amethyst deck is running it. I can't think of a deck that hasn't run it. Maybe Jafar doesn't run it. So I think that we can't downplay bounce as a mechanic anyways. Now, how this slots into current competitive decks, I'm not sure. I was thinking about this. I play mainly Ruby Amethyst, so thinking about how this would work in. It's a pretty good body for the stats. It does die to Medusa, but a lot of things die to Medusa. And thinking if I would try to run 4 of this in that deck. I don't think so. Snake is just cheaper, so it's a little bit better for, goat, snake, goat. Matt and Fox has Rush, which it just affects the board right away. It's such a good card, the Fox, that is. This one's competing with, Rabbit. It's competing with Goat. It's competing with Castle as far as 4-drops. I think there's definitely going to be an exploration of trying it out and, maybe just running a couple, maybe cutting down on a Snake, running a couple of these. But the fact that we have more options for the bounce package, I think is going to be good. It's just going to be finding that line between when is too much or like how many is too much, where if you've played any Amethyst decks, I'm sure you've run into an issue where you are in top deck mode, you top deck a Snake, and then you top deck another Fox or Snake, and you're kind of like, well, these are just dead cards in my hand. So the more of these that we play, the more likely that it is to happen. So I think it's just trying to find the right amount. So for that reason, I'm going to say it's in B, where I don't think it's an auto like include, which would kind of put it in A, or like a meta defining card. But I definitely think that depending on what's going on in the meta, that we'll see it utilized to some extent. Luisa Madrigal, 6-cost uninkable 4/8 that quests for 3. That's nice, good stats. Unfortunately, I feel like at this point in the game, anything that doesn't have an ability is really tough to see it fitting in. I think that it needs to do more than just be a body. I think it needs to offer something else. So I'm going to put this in D for right now. But overall, the stats are fine, especially because it's uninkable. That's just again, we don't have room for uninkable vanilla cards. Next card is Anna. Is 7 cost, uninkable, 4/5 that can shift for 4. It quests for 2, and it says when you play this character, exert all opposing characters. I really like this card. I am trying to make sure I see it through a, not seeing with rosy colored glasses, trying to see it as it is, because I really like the effect of being able to exert all the characters. I think the fact that this gets around ward characters is really big. The fact that it has 4 strength is going to be really big for not dying to Medusa. And I think it can set up a lot of things where, if they have a board and you don't have to worry about them just being untapped or unexerted, you can just take care of it, clear the board in a way, and it might help promote some of those decks that care more about challenging. Maybe that's why too. I love the challenge matters card. So, but I like this card. I think it's really powerful. I don't think it's going to be a 4 of. I think the uninkability is tough, but I definitely think that there are going to be some decks that can utilize this really well and really strong. Especially, again, it gets around Ward, it gets around Cogsworth, all that stuff. So I'm going to leave it at A. Might be a little bit high on the card, but I like it. All right, next is Archimedes Electrified Owl. It's a 5 cost inkable 1/4 that quests for 2. It can shift for 3. It has evasive and challenger +3. This, I don't know. I think in C I'll put it. Maybe. I think that it's a cool card. I think that having something that challenges well with evasive is good. 4 health means you can most likely trade into multiple evasives. You can get rid of 2 Diablos. But to get it out on turn 3, you'd have to play the earlier Archimedes like we talked about and then shift it out. So it's a 2-card combo to try to deal with, something like a Diablo and then still have board presence. So I don't think it's super strong. I think it's a cool card. So I'm just going to leave it in C. It's definitely not unplayable, but the spaces where it is playable seem pretty niche. And like you have to commit a lot to utilize it. Next is Elsa, the 5th Spirit. It's a 2/5. It's a rush character with evasive. When you play this character, you can exert chosen opposing character. I've heard a lot of people are really high on this card. I'm not that I'm not high on the card. I guess it just seems like, let me talk my way through it here. So you have rush, so it's going to affect the board right away. It has evasive, so you'll be able to deal with evasive threats right away. It's coming down on turn 5, so the biggest evasive threat I can think of right off the top is Diablo. But it does take care of Diablo without a cove. You can exert something right away, so if there is a character that you want to challenge, then you can take care of that as long as it doesn't have ward. I think there's use. I think the fact that it's inkable is great and will definitely make it more of like a tech option. I think that's why I'm going to... I think leaving it in B is great. I think the Cogsworth, giving something else, rush can be really, really important. Obviously, this does it all on 1 card, but I'm going to leave it in B. I think that it can see play if there's a lot of evasives and things you can do. I don't know if there would be a situation that you would want this over Maui. Again, maybe to take out a pesky evasive, but it only has 2 strength, so the amount of evasives you can take out in 1 shot are a little bit more challenging. Genie Main Attraction, a 7 cost uninkable 5/5 that quests for 2. While this character is exerted, opposing characters can't ready at the start of your turn. So this is another card that just cares about your opponent's characters being exerted. This is a lot tougher to control. I'll say a C. Again, similar to Mirabelle, it feels tough to put a legendary in D, but I think that you'll need to commit a lot to this. I don't think it's going to see any competitive play. I think it's a fun card that this is a good payoff for exerting characters, but the fact that it's uninkable, it doesn't come down onto 7, you can't shift it. I think it's just a tough thing to do consistently, and playing more and more, I think we'll talk about it with the next card, realizing how infrequently there's like a lot of characters exerted. So you don't get as much value from it, I think, as maybe you dream up in your head. It's easier to be like, oh, they have their whole board exerted, and then I play this and I stun them out, and they can't deal with it. Unfortunately, I find most games don't actually work like that as much as I would like them to. Next is Olaf, Happy Passenger. For each exerted character opponents have in play, you play one less to play this character and has evasive. So it's a 9-cost uninkable that you can pay less if your opponents have exerted characters in play. And then it's a 6/6 that quests for 3. I think that, unfortunately, again, maybe you do play it in that deck. I'll put it in C. Maybe if you do play it in that deck, again, I think it's just really hard to have multiple characters down. Like, at a certain point, you're probably happy paying this for, 7 or 6 or something like that. But again, with 7 and 6 ink, I think you want to have a little bit more impact than just playing a big creature that can quest for a lot, because it could be King Undisputed, or they could just play a Be Prepared, or the dice to removal case. But again, I think just having more of an impact and the cost reduction being, I think, a little bit too conditional hurts this card. Next is a Maleficent, Vexed Partygoer. It's a 3-cost inkable 0/4 that quests for 2. When this character quests, you may choose and discard a card to return chosen character, item, or location with cost 3 or less to their player's hand. So what this is saying is, when you quest, you discard a card, and it's almost like playing a free, I'll put that in quotes, it costs you a card, but a free Mother Knows Best. I mean, I guess I could see play, right? Like, we're starting to see a little sub-theme of Maleficents wanting to bounce your opponent's stuff to clear the board, make tempo plays. It comes down on 3, so that's nice, and especially if you're on the play, then you can quest with this and get rid of one of your opponent's things to, help control the board. Maybe you quest off. I'll say in C. I don't know. This one, I think it's a high C. I think it's like definitely more fringe of, like, maybe in some aggressive decks, maybe in like a Amethyst Emerald where you're already bouncing things. This kind of does it. I think the fact that you have to discard a card is a little rough, but maybe you get rid of a card that's not helpful in the situation, or an uninkable, and you can at least turn it into something that impacts the board right away. So I'll leave it in C for right now. I could see this one being a little bit higher. Maybe I'm undervaluing it, but I'm going to put it in C for right now. High C. Monstro, 5-cost inkable 5/6 that quests for 1. Again, vanilla cards, I think, just don't have a place in competitive decks at this point anymore, but cool art. Magicka Dispel, Cruel Sorceress, a 4-cost inkable 2/5, quest for 1. During your opponent's turns, if an effect would cause you to discard 1 or more cards from your hand, you don't discard. I think that this is another strong card. It would really rely on the meta. So if you're playing against, Amber Emerald discard, or if you're playing against a Whole New World deck, this is really nice to put down to try to stop them from doing that. It has a decent enough body where 5 willpower can stand a decent amount of stuff from steal. I think that this is definitely a tech card that's going to see play, depending on how oppressive wheel decks get, or how oppressive any sort of discard stuff with, Prince John's Mirror and things like that we'll talk about in Emerald become. So I like the card. Would have loved to have this card for Bucky, but I guess it's probably a little too slow for what the Bucky deck was doing anyways. Maleficent, Vengeful Sorceress. We've seen a couple cards like this before. 2-cost inkable 2/2 that quests for 2. Vanilla, again, questing for 2 is fine if there's a Maleficent deck. It will go in there, but other than that, nothing too crazy there. We'll put it in C for time being. Rafiki, Shaman Duelist, 4-cost uninkable 1/4 rush that quests for 2. When you play this character, he gains Challenger +4 for turn. So this reminds me a lot of the Zeus from set 1 that had 0, but always had Challenger 4. The fact that you only get this on turn 1, I think is not great. The fact that, I mean, they're both uninkable, but the fact that this is uninkable is not great. It has stats, a quest for 2. If 5 becomes a really important threshold, we could see it seeing some play, so I'll put it in C, but for right now, I don't think that it really slots in. Again, 4 is a really tough slot for Amethyst, especially I'm thinking Ruby Amethyst anyway, with you really just want to be rabbiting or doing something. This at least, like, it does control the board, but I don't know if playing this as opposed to, getting a fox down or something like that. Let's try. All right, Ana, 3-cost uninkable 1/3, quest for 1. When you play this character, each opponent chooses and exerts one of their ready characters. So this would get around Ward if they just had 1 character. I think that this is in C. It does make a nice shift target for the Ana I put up in A, and that would be, I think, one of the reasons to play it. Unfortunately, it is uninkable, so again, that you just have to watch the counts of that. So I'm going to put it in C for right now. I think in a vacuum, probably not efficient enough to be playing in competitive decks, but depending on, if you want some good shift targets for the Ana and what other colors you're playing, could see some play. King of Hearts, 4-cost inkable 1/4, the quest for 2, and it has the ability where you can exert it, and chosen exerted character can't ready at the start of their next turn. I think for 4 ink, and it doesn't affect the board right away, that stat line is pretty abysmal, and these kind of lock effects, I think, again, are less frequent than maybe we think the dream would be for them. So I'm going to put this in D. Don't think it's playable at all. Another legendary, Camilo Madrigal. We have a 6-cost inkable 3/7, and it says, whenever the character quests, you may gain lore equal to the lore of chosen other characters of yours. And then you bounce that character to your hand. So I guess the goal here is this like in a blurple where you're trying to get a really big Tamatoa. You quest with the Tamatoa. You then quest with this. You bounce the Tamatoa back to your hand. But yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. I think it's a little too weird with the bounce and that. I'll put it in C. I think that it can be a really fun build around and trying to figure out, okay, like, what is this a big wombo combo we can get off? But a lot of what we're looking for in competitive decks is consistency. We're looking for things that we can do reliably, and while this is fun, I don't think it has that reliability. I think it has potential for really, really big plays, but whether or not those are good enough to consistently happen and win you games on a regular basis, I don't think so. Hypnotic Strength, draw a card, chosen character gains Challenger +2 this turn. While drawing a card is nice, I think the fact that it's an action is really tough. If it was a song, I think it would probably be more likely to see play, but just being an action on its own makes it, I think, a little bit more challenging. It does replace itself, and it can boost up your character. And I'm trying to think. So maybe we talked about Daisy Duck being a card that might warp things. On turn 2, this could give your 1-drop enough attack to get rid of a Daisy Duck. And that would probably be the best case use of it, where you get to draw a card, but then you're still... Yeah, I'll leave it in D for right now. I think that's fine. Finders Keepers, action, draw 3 cards. D again. I think it's too much for on turn 5. You really want to do something that's going to affect the board. This does nothing, so therefore it goes to D. A 3-cost inkable song, We Know the Way. Shuffle chosen card from your discard into your deck. Reveal the top card of your deck. If it has the same name as the chosen card, you may play the revealed card for free. Otherwise, put it into your hand. I don't know. I don't think so. You're shuffling something into your deck, which is okay, and then I think it's just way too conditional. I think that to do all of this to draw one card, I think that's way too much. So I'm going to put it in D. I think that's unfortunately not going to see a lot of play. Shuffling your deck might be nice, but again, that's like super conditional. You don't want just to have a card just to shuffle your deck. Gathering Knowledge and Wisdom, a 2-cost uninkable action, gain 2 lore. I think in most decks that this is a dead card. You don't want to have this, but it might see play in like hyper aggro where you don't care about anything else. You just want to gain as much lore as quick as you can, and you play this to try to close out the game. But in any other deck, I don't think that it's worth it, a card slot. Magical Aid, another action, 3-cost inkable. Chosen character gains Challenger +3, and when this character is banished in a challenge, return this card to your hand this turn. The fact that it can save a character on the board makes me put it in C. Again, I don't think it's a good enough removal. You still are losing something on the board. You're gaining a little bit of card advantage, but most likely you're still wanting to trade. Maybe you can make an even more favorable trade than you would, but again, I think that there's much more efficient removal. Retrosphere item, 1-cost inkable to pay 2, and you banish this item. Return chosen character, item, or location with cost 3 or less to your player's hand. I'm going to put this in D. I think maybe use it to do your own thing, but to sink 3 into it on an item, I don't think that that's a great rate. Half Hexwell Crown, we saw this in Ursula's the Lumineer's Quest. 6-cost uninkable, you can exert it in 2 to draw a card. You can exert it, pay 2, and discard a card, and you can exert a chosen character. That is just way too expensive for what it is doing. Way too expensive. D. Amethyst Chromicon, a 2-cost inkable item. Each player may draw a card. I'll put it in C. There might be instances where you care more about drawing cards than you do your opponent, but most of the time I think like one of the things that makes Amber strong is that we generate more card advantage than our opponent, and that is we win the game over the course of a turn. When it becomes even, I think that it can, we just give our advantage away. So typically giving your opponent a card for free is not good. We're down to the last 2 cards. Our first location is Elsa's Ice Palace, a 3-cost uninkable, 4 willpower, costs 1 to move here, and it says when you play this location, choose an exerted character. While this location is in play, that character can't ready at the start of the turn. The fact that this only has 4, I think just makes it unplayable. 4 willpower is tough. I think if a strong breeze came by, it would get rid of that card. And last but certainly not least, the Library, a 3-cost inkable, 8 willpower, costs 1 to move there. You get 1 lore at the start of your turn, and it says whenever a character is banished while here, you may draw a card. This, I think, is probably the best Amethyst card that was released in the set. Similar to Queen's Castle, a big benefit of it was getting cards, and with this you can control, you can trade effectively, and you can get cards for trading the board. I think that this is a great card, and it'll be interesting to see how this and Queen's Castle start to interact with each other in decks and kind of what the split is. The fact that it's an uncommon is great, and I am excited for it. But thanks for checking out the Amethyst ones. Next up will be Emerald.